Viewer discretion is advised.
A few years ago, I put together a video talking about 5 puppet TV shows for adults, and it did surprisingly well for my channel. Honestly, I was just happy to see that someone other than me shared an interest in the art of puppetry, even if it was of the crude adult comedy variety. But I also noticed a lot of comments mentioning shows that I had missed, and that brought me to the idea of doing a sequel video of sorts. This is something I've considered doing for quite a while now, so it feels good to finally get around to it. For this list, I will be sticking to puppet shows made solely for adults. Many of these will be comedies, but that's just because that's the vast majority of this medium when it comes to adult programming. I will try to rank these in order of how much I enjoy them, and if you disagree with the choice, that's to be expected and perfectly fine. So with that said, here are 5 more puppet TV shows for adults. Number 5.
Come on, 'cause we're having a ball. We're just making some calls to strangers. We're back on the cell when the world's gone to hell, but you're gonna feel swell when they pick up.
Of all the shows on this list, Crank Yankers happens to be the most popular, at least in America. Crank Yankers is a show that features both series regulars and celebrity guests performing crank calls on random people of various workplaces.
Now, how big is this cock?
It is in a 10-ounce tube,
All
and
right.
it comes in clear.
Now, does the cock smell?
Each segment is reenacted using puppets and compiled into a 20-minute episode. The show initially aired on Comedy Central in 2002 and has since gone on for what will soon be 6 seasons, although there was a brief period of time when the show aired on MTV2 in 2007. The idea in itself of recreating these crank calls using puppets is pretty clever and fun. A lot of times the show will use reoccurring characters, whether it be Hadassah Guberman, Spoonie Love, Dick Burcham, or Elmer. It can be pretty entertaining seeing the various situations that each of these characters get themselves into.
I put them on, I tied them up tight, and now I can't move.
How come? What's the matter?
What kind of heavy boots you people selling over there?
However, much of the show's enjoyment heavily relies on whether or not you find crank calls funny, and in that sense, this show is just not my cup of tea. It definitely has its moments, but given the subject matter, sometimes it comes off as more cringe-inducing than funny, and whether or not it's funny also really depends on how the receiver reacts. And there are times when the show can feel a bit mean-spirited, the most obvious example being the character of Special Ed, which, yikes. Thankfully, when the show was brought back in 2019, they were sure to remove the character, so good on them, I guess. One of Jimmy Kimmel's characters, Elmer, also recently made an appearance in the Super Bowl ad for that streaming service that no one wants that they probably wasted billions of dollars on. So that goes to show just how popular the show really is. To my knowledge, Crank Yankers is still going till this day, which is pretty impressive. It's surprising how such a simple idea has managed to garner so much success. While I'm not a huge fan, I am able to recognize that it's probably just because this brand of humor isn't really for me. It's still a creative, fun idea and a puppet show that I'm sure plenty of people will enjoy. Number 4. Fur TV is a British show featuring 3 puppets who share an apartment and the various hard R shenanigans they find themselves in. The show started out as a short film back in 2002 that won BBC's Greenlight Award for Best Comedy, but it wouldn't get picked up by MTV Europe until 2008. Just goes to show to always keep trying. Created by Chris Waite and Henry Trotter, Fur TV is without a doubt the most loud, crude, obnoxious, and uncensored show on this list. And despite being a show that should have easily annoyed me, it's surprisingly funny.
My furry friend, you realize that if we do not pay our rent, we will have to answer to our beloved landlord.
Oh shit! No, Mr. Slaughter!
Yes, Mr. Slaughter.
The main 3 puppets of this show are Lupino Enriquez, a Brazilian womanizer, Fat Ed, a loudmouthed, beer-obsessed heavy metal fanatic, and Mervyn, who is kind of like the perverted punching bag of the group. Most of these characters are assholes, but they are likable assholes, and I think that's really the key to the show's success. With how fast-paced the show is, it's very easy to get into the flow of an episode without ever feeling bored. Its humor may be low, but it's so bombastic that it's hard not to get a laugh out of at least a few of these jokes. I think the fact that they were willing to push a lot of these jokes so far just helps keep it funny. There weren't many episodes of this show made, and finding a place to watch it in the US can be quite difficult, but it's a show that, despite not lasting very long, seemed pretty well received in its home country. If you can find it and you want something fast, crude, and funny, give it a watch. You may enjoy it. Number 3. If Crank Yankers is the most popular show on this list in America, then Podge and Raj, A Scare at Bedtime, surely is the most popular show on this list in specifically Ireland. This is the kind of show that is right up my alley, a play on the RTE show A Prayer at Bedtime. A Scare at Bedtime features 2 twin puppets named Podge and Raj. Each of the early episodes would begin with the both of them sitting in bed while Raj would fill Podge in on what was going on in his life. This would lead to Podge telling him a cautionary tale in a similar style to a horror anthology show.
Right, so no more summons up the queer fatty, you feckless rogue. You'd end up like that poor Egypt, Damien McArsagon. Who? You know him. Damien McArsagon from 6 Mile Hole.
In later episodes, they'd have a change of location, but the general concept of the show remained the same. The show first aired in 1997 on the Irish public service broadcaster, RTE. Each segment of the show was rather short, with most of them lasting roughly 5 to 10 minutes. The puppets of Podge and Raj were both incredibly rude and lewd in their comments, often making jokes about masturbation or sexual comments about the fictional Mary Black.
Oh, by the way, what? Did I tell you I gave a hooligan's daughter a ride this afternoon? You what? I gave her a ride home. That's what I thought you said. What have I told you about hitchhikers?
It's another example of something that shouldn't be that funny, but the way each line is delivered results in a show that's incredibly entertaining. Each tale told by Podge is reenacted using live-action actors. This is a case where I actually prefer the majority of Season 1 to the rest of the show seasons, or I guess series because it's Ireland. When the show first starts off, each cautionary tale is told through vague, dreamlike imagery that I felt really added to the effect. But as the show progressed, the snips of human footage became clearer, which kind of took away some of the appeal for me. The stories also became less straight-up horror and more horror comedy, with them finding ways to incorporate more sexual innuendos and crass imagery into them. So yeah, I do prefer the early stuff to the later, but the vast majority of the show is the later, and with that said, it's still a pretty entertaining, fun show, solely due to Podge and Raj being such fun characters. It really does remind me of the type of show you'd see early in the morning on a channel like Adult Swim. The show was even nominated for a few awards in Ireland and ended in 2006. It went on to spawning new shows starring the titular characters, such as The Podge and Raj Show, a talk show in which the 2 puppets would invite on celebrity guests just to roast them, and Podge and Raj Stick It In, which started as a pub quiz show but quickly became yet another talk show, because I guess that's just what people wanted from them.
I was very privileged to have been asked onto the show and went on and just got slaughtered.
Now, Brendan. Yes? You've had a whirlwind career. #1 books, TV shows, stage plays, videos and movies. Is it a case of hard work and talent, or an overflowing piss bucket full of luck?
A Scare at Bedtime is definitely worth checking out. I mean, with how short each episode is, you really can't regret it. Plus, you can find whole seasons of this show on YouTube, so please give it a watch. Number 2.
I love you.
Now, Daddy. Hey, son. Get out. I love you, son.
At first sight, Blark Sun appears to be absolutely terrifying. I mean, you take a good look at these puppets and try not having nightmares tonight. But after actually watching the show, I can safely say that this show is actually pretty funny, and the over-exaggerated facial expressions each puppet bears really adds to that. Blark Sun is a newer Comedy Central series that first aired in 2018. The show is a short-form comedy show that follows an overbearing father trying desperately to connect with his distant son.
Son, I was thinking, how do you take our already rock-solid bond and compress it further into a father-son friendship diamond?
Oh, by putting another lock on my door?
Close. By putting us in the throes of Mother Nature with a good old-fashioned camping trip.
Blark is voiced by show creator Ben Bayouth, whereas his son, yes, that's his name, is voiced by Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who is honestly, perfect casting for that part. The show follows a fairly small cast of characters, so you really get the chance to know each of them and their different quirks. I think a big part of what makes this show work is it could easily come off as mean-spirited with this dad constantly interfering in his son's life, but it all seems to fit well into the insane world that this takes place in. It's not just the weird-looking puppets and the line delivery that makes the show funny, but the clever writing too. I could see this show still working if they had chosen to make it a cartoon instead.
Whoa! You're watching Happy TV. Up next, everything's great, followed by Successful Dad.
Why am I watching this?
Blark Sun is currently on its second season, and you can watch all of season 1 free on YouTube. I don't have too much to say on this one, other than it's a very good show. You should all give it a watch. Number 1. A while back, Netflix announced the cancellation of the Dark Crystal prequel series, Age of Resistance, which left me very bummed out. It wasn't exactly an adult puppet show, but it was the only one I could think of that didn't use puppetry merely for comedy. There's a beauty to the art that's rarely been explored in the past few decades, and that's why I was happy to discover the Japanese-Taiwanese action show, Thunderbolt Fantasy. Now before I can begin talking about Thunderbolt Fantasy, we have to go back, way back, to 1985 and the start of a Taiwanese action fantasy glove puppetry show called Peely. Peely is actually a super popular show in Taiwan. I mean, this show is still going till this day, yet it's somehow impossible to find episodes of. So here are some clips from the US adaptation instead.
Land warriors!
You know what this means?
Pizza party?
No! It means we must return to the academy.
To eat pizza?
Wulan Warriors was like Peely abridged, and yes, it actually aired on real TV. But I'm getting sidetracked. What I'm really here to talk about is Thunderbolt Fantasy, which is a collaboration between Nitro Plus, Good Smile, and the production company for Peely in an attempt to bring that same style of show over to Japan. Thunderbolt Fantasy is the story of a wandering swordsman by the name of Shang Bu Huan, who comes across Faye, a girl in possession of a valuable piece of a sword. Together they team up with various other characters in order to protect Faye from Zhuang Guizong. If you hold it against me for mispronouncing all of those names, we are not friends anymore.
I'm not playing with you anymore!
The series first aired in 2016. The first thing you'll notice about this show is the beautiful puppetry. Not only the beautiful, unique designs, but the way in which the puppets move, especially during action sequences. It's just stunning to look at. The action in this show is incredibly over the top, and it's not afraid to get gory when it has to be. I may sound like a masochist here, but I've gotta admit, watching puppets splatter blood is super entertaining. Thunderbolt Fantasy is not a comedy series. Yes, there's the occasional joke, but in terms of tone and structure, it pretty much is an anime, only with puppets.
両風接人という言葉にお心当たりはありますまいか?
Sometimes that works against the show. Season 1 I took some issue with, as it often felt too much like animes that I've already seen. Following all of the popular tropes and such, there was also a lot of exposition that really bogged it down, and if I were solely basing my thoughts on the first season, it wouldn't have been number 1 on this list. But season 2, for me at least, is where the show drastically improves, resulting in a season with more likable characters and a story I found myself pretty invested in. On top of that, one thing I did not like about season 1 was how the various creatures in the show were done using CG as opposed to puppetry, but this was also partially fixed in season 2. The music in this show is also really good and helps carry the already excellent visuals. But I really feel it is, at the end of the day, the visuals that do carry the show, and not everyone is going to like this kind of show. You may have to suspend your disbelief to enjoy a puppet action fantasy, but I know I sure enjoyed it, and I'm actually looking forward to watching season 3, which should be airing in Japan sometime later this year. So if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, then yes, give Thunderbolt Fantasy a shot. And there you have it. Those were 5 more puppet TV shows for adults. I hope this list encouraged some of you to check out a show that you maybe haven't heard of. I'm fully aware that there are many more adult puppet shows that I didn't cover, and maybe that's a video for another day. Nevertheless, if there were any I missed, feel free to point them out in the comments. Also, feel free to check out some of the other videos on my channel. I do lots of reviews for movies, TV shows, and even toys. Thank you to everyone who watched, and I hope to be seeing you all again sometime soon. Goodbye.